Welcome to Code the Future. Today on the show, we're sitting down with Asad Lesani, VP of Smart Infrastructure at Ouster, a company that is redefining how the world uses LiDAR by bringing digital sensors to everything from traffic systems to industrial automation and more. Asad has been at the forefront of the company's push to apply advanced sensing to real-world infrastructure challenges, and today on the show, we're going to be unpacking how LiDAR is being used by cities to make them safer, more efficient, and more intelligent. Asad, welcome to the show. Thrilled to have you with us.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
So I think, safer, more efficient, and more intelligent. I think every city across the U.S. East Coast and Midwest could appreciate those three things this year, particularly with some of the wild weather and winter storms that we've had. But before we get into what you're doing on the infrastructure front, give us a little bit of an overview in terms of your role at Ouster. How would you describe what you do to a 5-year-old, say?
Yeah. The idea of using LiDAR for like ITS was actually a part of my PhD research. I was at McGill and doing PhD in transportation, and the focus of a research group was on using technologies to collect data for pedestrian cyclist vehicles and use this data for real-time actions for safety improvement. So there were a lot of challenges at that time on using the existing technologies. And then I looked at like what kind of other alternative exists in the market from the sensing detection and perspective. So I looked at the LiDAR technology, and at that time I co-founded a company called Blue City, which was basically we built a software solution on top of existing LiDAR in the market. We were using Velodyne LiDAR for many years. And then the company was acquired by Velodyne in 2022, and then we merged with Ouster in 2023. And then we're just scaling this technology and software stack to like ITS. A little bit about Ouster. Ouster is a company based in San Francisco. So we're the largest Western LiDAR manufacturer. We invented the digital LiDAR technology. The design and digital aspect of our technology brings reliability, scalability to the LiDAR industry. And now and currently I'm VP of a smart infrastructure product, mostly focused on ITS application as we see it, a big demand for using LiDAR for those applications.
So the biggest advantages for using LiDAR then are reliability, scalability, and safety at the end of the day. Are there any other benefits, and what sort of misconceptions do you find you're having to continually, correct or myth bust within the market?
Yeah, so I think one of the challenges that we had at the earliest stage is that LiDAR is a new technology. There are a lot of cities and municipalities, they haven't even heard about the LiDAR and how it works. So
yeah,
we needed to spend a lot of time to educate the market since like 2022, 2023 that we were scaling our product. So one of the misconceptions, which is still that's the case, is like the LiDAR is very expensive, which is not the case anymore. And I think the reason behind it is, specifically for Ouster, is that our LiDAR is being used for a variety of different applications, from industrial robotic. And when we increase the volume, the price goes down. And this was one of the misconceptions. Right now, we are like from the pricing and cost structure, we're very similar, if not competitive, more competitive than any other detection system in ITS. And the other thing is that like how reliable the sensor is. It's a new technology, as it hasn't been proven. But again, over the past 2 or 3 years, we tried to prove that this is a technology that is built to last like 5-10 years when you deploy it in a 24/7 operation use cases.
So I know, Ouster made it sort of an early decision to look beyond automotive, and I think that's what, LiDAR is most associated with, is the automotive or smart transportation industry. But how, what drove that foresight in terms of looking beyond automotive? And can you speak a little bit about the different sectors that your technology is found in?
Yeah, so our CEO Angus all frequently says that like every moving machine in the world requires like autonomy. It will be either autonomous or it could be like semi-autonomous down the road. And because of that, we need LiDAR on every of those machines to sense and think about the environment around it and navigate the machine. And because of that, we believe that like physical AI and the detection and sensing is really core for a lot of those autonomy use cases, including machines. And we know that AVs and autonomous vehicles down the road will get like to use LiDAR and other technologies, but a lot of those programs in general are slow. So because of that, I think our management made a right decision on focusing on applications that we can serve today and the problems that there exist today.
Hmm.
And there are scale opportunities today. And a couple of those use cases, smart infrastructure is one of our biggest industries that we are in. Smart infrastructure for us is basically any application that the LiDAR is installed from a stationary like installation
Hmm.
perspective, basically.
Okay. So not
So
moving.
not moving,
Yep.
exactly. So smart infrastructure for us, we divide it into two categories. ITS, which is my team, and the focus of my team is basically using it for detection, traffic analysis, safety analytics, and those type of use cases. And then we have another sector for our smart infrastructure, which covers basically crowd analytics, security, and we've seen a lot of growth on that. So just giving you an example on the smart infrastructure other than ITS, like for example, we have one of the biggest technology companies in the world using our system for making their logistic hubs basically automated
Hmm.
from security perspective, from monitoring queue analysis for the trucks that are getting there. And it was interesting when we were doing some analysis, they only deployed it at 5% of their global footprint, and they're saving about $1 million per week
Wow.
with that,
Okay.
like
Yeah.
making it
Huge
automated.
potential.
Huge potential. And this is just one example of
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
And of course, Ouster is actively involved in many other industries. So like from industrial application, from robotics. So robotic, if you get a chance to go to California, you see those small
Yeah.
robots that deliver foods, like Serve
Mm.
Robotics, for example, is one of our customers that are using our LiDAR for that. So we work in the mining industry for autonomous mining equipment. Komatsu is one of our
Mm.
customers that they're using active VR sensors for navigation of their equipment. Drone, so we have a couple of major mapping companies in the world that they are using our LiDAR for 3D mapping on the
Yeah.
vehicle. So there's a lot of potentials, and these are just example of the application and different industries that Ouster is
Yeah.
involved in.
Yeah. Certainly sounds like if you're seeing something out in the world that has some level of autonomy, there's a pretty good chance that Ouster might be the brains or the guts of it, much like, yeah, an ingredient brand, much like we are at QNX, right? But
Right.
I want to turn back to sort of the debate between, camera-based sensing versus LiDAR. I'm sure this is something that comes up time and time again. I mean, looking towards the future, 10 years on, 20 years on, do you think this sort of hybrid model will continue to prevail, whether it's auto or other industries, or do you think one will ultimately win the day?
I don't think it's going to be always like one sensing technology that wins everything. I think there are certain applications that you need a fusion, you need redundancy. So automotive applications could be one of those that you might still have a camera, radar, a mix of those technologies.
Yeah.
But there are definitely certain applications that we see that LiDAR, single like sensor LiDAR can basically get all the data that they need. So
Mhm.
ITS is an example of that. So the reason that we see like a lot of success in ITS is that ITS, the reliability is the key. Detection of and classification of different type of road users is the key.
Mhm.
And as we improve our LiDAR down the road with higher resolution, I remember when like 10 years ago, we had a smartphone that it was probably half a megapixel camera, and now we have
Yeah.
32, 40, 50 as it's just growing.
Yeah.
And this is the same story for LiDAR.
Yeah.
And there's no reason down the road LiDAR cannot be integrated with a built-in camera. So
Mhm.
this is something that would definitely is possible down the
Yeah.
road. But to your again, going back to your question, it's not just always the debate about which one is the best.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's a combination of those technologies. Sometimes just one single technology can serve the needs
Yeah,
for that.
yeah. So both can play nice in the sandbox is what
Yeah,
you were saying. Yeah,
yeah,
good
exactly.
stuff. So turning back to the sort of the ITS question in municipalities, I mean, cities, municipalities, where is that demand coming from? Is it about safety? Is it about cost? Is it about environmental metrics? Is it a combination of all three? How would you sort of sum up what's driving this market?
I think it's a combination of all of these. So for many years, when you look at traffic operation in general, meaning like how we can move vehicles faster, more efficient.
Yeah.
The focus was only on vehicles. The challenge was that as we have more new, like other modes of traffic coming in, like scooters, like active mobility that a lot of cities are pushing, like walking, biking.
Yeah.
So we need to take into account other type of road users when it comes to the planning of your city, basically. Because of that, a lot of cities start looking at camera instead of radar, or mix of camera and radar, because radar was good with respect to the reliability. Camera is good when it comes to the multimodal detection. And LiDAR actually can address the basic all the challenges with those existing technologies. So I would say like a lot of our customers are excited about LiDAR and our application because of the fact that they can use it for their existing traffic operation, vehicle detection and stop bar, and changing signal timing for vehicles, but also implementing a lot of safety related application. Just as an example, like Utah DOT is one of our biggest customers. Right now, they have probably something around 150 intersections deployed with our system. Every single intersection that they deploy our solution, they use it for active detection of pedestrian. And for example, one of the safety related application is extending the walk time when there's a pedestrian and crosswalk.
Yeah.
So it not only improves the safety of pedestrians, but also improves the operation of the vehicles. Because if there's no pedestrian on the crosswalk or no one is waiting for the green light, there's no reason to give green light for pedestrians.
Yeah.
So making that adaptive, I think it's a really key.
Yeah.
And one other thing that I want to quickly talk about is what LiDAR is bringing is not just the current addressing the current needs. It's also paving the road for down the road with connected vehicles and autonomous vehicle application.
V2X.
Yeah, V2X is exactly one of the interesting like topics, and we're working with like different OEMs and different projects on that. And the idea here is that you use the system for the existing application, but we can also share this information in real time over V2X protocols to connected vehicles.
Right.
And then when they're approaching intersection, complex environment like intersection, they can basically get more information. So these are all reasons that LiDAR is getting a lot of tractions.
I mean, my mind initially goes to the safety benefits, but your point around, if there's no one at the crosswalk or the intersection, we can extend the green light, we can cut down on traffic, which I think, the economic burden or the cost of traffic in city after city is probably in the billions, right? So I think that's sort of one of those not necessarily intended outcomes that also LiDAR can help with, right? So thinking about some of these sort of gold standards, you mentioned the Utah DOT. How do you measure that ROI? Like, are you looking at, number of crashes that occurred before LiDAR was deployed, or the number of near misses or fatalities, or traffic is now cut down? How do you sort of go back to that customer and say, hey, look at what we delivered?
Yeah.
Or is it softer?
I think there was we had a couple of interesting use cases that was published. So one of them was, we have one of our biggest deployments is with city of Chattanooga in Tennessee, and they had a corridor with a lot of safety issues. And what they ended up doing is putting our sensor in a mid-block location, which was close to a college campus, and a lot of like students, they were just walking through mid-block. There was no crosswalk around that location. And during like a week of data collection using our system, they found that there were a lot of jaywalking, but basically people that they're walking randomly, not using crosswalk. And the challenge was that during low lighting condition, vehicles might not have visibility on those. And it was a high-speed corridor, so it was causing a lot of safety issues. What they ended up doing is basically using our system to monitor how many near misses they had, like how many critical near misses they had. And they found over 1 week, they had around 400 near misses within that corridor, like small area, like around 200, 150 meters that was covered by our sensor. And then they ended up just adding a small like mid-block crossing and a flashing beacon to warn drivers when there's a pedestrian on the road. And then they did another 7 day of data collection, and they found that the number of near misses, critical near misses, dropped to 0. And when they were looking at the heat map of the pedestrian walking the corridor, most of them, they were actually using crosswalk because of that, the small. So it basically shows like small investment on a simple application can massively improve the safety of road users. Yeah.
That's incredible when you think about the sheer potential it has to cut down not just on fatalities, but accidents and, that kind of thing. So what are the barriers to scalability then, right? Like when you talk about this one block intersection in Chattanooga, how do you begin to start to do that everywhere in every city that has these sorts of needs?
Yeah. So one of the barriers that we had like probably 2 years ago when we started scaling this solution is just proving that this is a reliable system. So uh, like the for many municipalities, just buying an equipment and installing it might not be a challenge from the cost perspective. Is the cost of the maintenance and
Mm,
reliability of those systems, how long those systems are lasting. So
right.
over the past 2-3 years, we could prove to our customers that this is a reliable system. It's
Hmm.
really low maintenance system compared to camera-based solutions. You
Yep.
don't need to go and clean the sensor every 3-4 months. So that was one of the barriers that we had. And through the pilot programs, we could basically prove that this is a reliable and scalable solution. And then there's another aspect is that for ITS and transportation in general, we have for some states, they have a approved product list that we need to get into that to
Oh, okay.
scale into
Right.
that.
Of course.
So those approval process are typically very slow. It's
Yep.
sometimes it takes 2-3 years.
Wow.
So that's why like we started very early stage. The challenge for us was that LiDAR was new. There was
Hmm.
no basically specification for
Hmm.
LiDAR in those states. So we needed to walk through the pilot projects
Of
and
course.
basically showing that this is like a technology that can be used for those. So
Yeah.
these are I would say like two barriers. At the earliest stage, for sure, the cost was higher, but right now, as I mentioned, cost is not the barrier
Yeah.
anymore.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Excellent. I want to do a bit of a lightning round. When you think about, where the LiDAR space is at, its potential to scale, cut down on fatalities and accidents, what excites you the most? And then what's the issue, that potentially keeps you up at night? Is it the length of, approval timelines to get on that approved list by state DOTs, or what are you worried about and what are you excited about?
yeah, so I think the future of LiDAR is, I mean, it's very exciting for me. It's because what we are doing today is really paving the road for a lot of advanced use cases. So we briefly talked about V2X use case. So it's like just the fact that in real time, very accurately, we can generate object information and send through like a roadside unit to connected vehicles.
Hmm.
And when they are approaching intersection on their display, they can see there's a pedestrian, or if there's a fire truck is approaching, it's heavy vehicle, it gets advanced notification that there's still pedestrian at this location. These are a lot of use cases that we're at early stage, and we're just doing like the proof of concept right
Yep.
now. I think this is really exciting to see how LiDAR can enable a lot of other application. And then I would say from the challenges, of course, like the sales cycle and adoption is slow, but the fact that we already have some good pilot programs that
Yeah.
are going beyond like 510, like Utah, Chattanooga, Nashville DOT, which are
510 systems or
yeah,
LiDARs
these
in, yeah.
yeah, 10 intersections.
Yeah.
So these are cities or examples that they already adopted 100 plus intersection. And it just basically shows like how the system can be adopted, and it makes our life really easy,
Hmm.
like to
Hmm.
show to other people as a reference of those. And one other area that we haven't even started working on that is from those projects that they scale like beyond 10, 15 intersection, we're collecting massive amount of data in real time, 24/7, object detection, pedestrian traffic, vehicle traffic.
Hmm.
There's a huge opportunity for us to leverage this data and offer more advanced like signal optimization.
Hmm.
Instead of just optimizing traffic flow for one intersection,
Hmm.
corridor
Yeah.
optimization. So we already have the base for that. We already have the cloud infrastructure that we're using today for a lot of safety analytics. So it's just matter of time that we leverage this data that we're generating to offer even more,
Yeah.
more
The
analytics.
other thing the other thing that occurs to me is oftentimes when, a customer buys a piece of technology, they don't necessarily want to shout, from the rooftops to the rest of the world to let them know because it's their little secret. But I think in this case, it's not necessarily competitive in terms of municipality versus municipality. If Chattanooga says, "Hey, look at the amount of accidents or fatalities we've cut down," that's the kind of thing that every city and every state should have at
Yeah.
their fingertips, right? So
That's correct. And
you
this is
probably,
what I love working with public sector
yeah.
is because if they're happy with something, they're going to promote it because it's a taxpayer money. They have to report it.
Right.
And we're leveraging those reports. When we're
Yeah.
talking to a new customer, we say, talk to this
Exactly.
the DOT, talk to the
Yeah.
city. So they're going to share the experience. And
That's
it's
great.
really good for
Yeah.
us.
We're just about at time, but always our final question to our guests is, if you've been in the industry for a long time, you're the focus of your PhD was around this, right? So if you think back to that younger you when you were in school, knowing what you know now, what piece of advice would you give yourself?
I think, as I mentioned, starting Blue City, going through acquisition, and then going through merger with Ouster, there were a lot of up and downs about the technology. Is it the right technology? Is it going to work? Like, slowness, like it's like getting the development like process a little bit slower. So I think if you're consistent and you believe in your vision and your mission, you can prove that this is what you're doing is benefiting. I think if you have that consistent path to in your career, so it's going to be very helpful. And it was always hard, like working hard, thinking about your mission, your vision, it's going to pay off. So
Yeah, I love that. And you certainly have a powerful mission and it's got huge potential for the future. So thank you very much for making the time.
no worries. Thank you for having me.